national level, that was region. So the National Climate Outlook Forum is made to provide meaningful interaction between the producers and users of climate information. It provides opportunity for forecast providers to interact with the forecast users with aim of communicating better the content and uncertainties inherent within seasonal predictions, and to build the co-production of mitigation measures and advisories based on the seasonal forecasts. So to break down the objective is that in this workshop, our objective is to, one, to ensure that climate information products, that is including the uncertainties and the limitations, are effectively communicated, interpreted, and understood by users. So through that, number two, we aim to obtain user feedback and discuss their views for improvement of climate products, joint interpretation, access, and their application. We also use this occasion to provide an institutional platform for understanding risks and opportunities of past, current, and future climate, and for interagency coordination of policies, sectoral plans, program linked to potential impact of hydrometeorological hazards. We also use, the objective will be to actually also take the opportunity to strengthen the culture of co-production and working together jointly with the climate information users, so that from various sectors, so that what comes out of the climate information which come out that is owned and appreciated by our users. So in short, this is a summary of what is expected, or that is what is the objectives. As I said, details, I will upload it in the chat box. Otherwise, this is a virtual meeting, and I'm hoping that we will be able to achieve those objectives. Meanwhile, I want to thank Red Cross and ICPAC, Red Cross for having supported us in the past two NCOFs and this one too. I will also want to thank ICPAC for having supported us too. I recognize you and we appreciate you. Thank you very much, Peter. Peter?
Thank you very much, Bwana Bernard Chanzu, giving us the objectives of this workshop, which are in line with the theme as been given. I think I've shared the program with you. I hope that you can see the program. We'll have remarks by the representative of Red Cross, that is Dr. Alima Sando. And then after that, we'll welcome the director to make our remarks. Dr. Alima, please.
Thank you, Peter. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
All right, let me just give a disclaimer. We are having power problems. In case I get disconnected, just bear with us and we'll try and rejoin again. So, Director, Kenya Meteorological Department, Madam Stella Aura, producers and users of climate and weather information and services here present, all protocol observed. Good morning to you all. I think as indicated by my friend, Mr. Chanzu, the importance of climate and weather information with regards to resilience building is at the heart of Kenya Red Cross. And that's why we've been part and parcel of this particular journey with Kenya Meteorological Department in terms of downscaling and localizing our forecast to be able to prepare effectively to enhance our response capacities as a humanitarian organization. And this is because the need to effectively and efficiently address the society needs, especially minimizing growing economic losses because of natural hazards that are related to climate and weather challenges, and more importantly, help our country, Kenya, is increasing the importance of weather, climate, and water information. And that's why we are really interested on not just what the weather is saying, but what the weather is going to do. So we are more interested on the impact so that we can be able to enhance our plannings, our decision-making moving forward. And now that we are very much aware that the bigger percent of what Kenya is facing in terms of challenges are either hydrological or meteorological related, and this results to a number or a total of high amount of losses countrywide, and more importantly, even within our country. It is important that we get reliable and accurate weather information, and it's making it very essential. And as you know, now we're in the middle of responding to drought. So the need of what the weather and climate information is telling us, and whether we are going to take action based on that, is increasing. And even Kenyan are asking us, if we know this was going to happen, why haven't we done something? That shows us that there is demand, and people are getting to understand that we actually, some of these events can be predicted and we can do something about it. So of course, the forecasting, the short term, the long term that we are getting from the Kenya Meteorological Department and other forecasting institutions regionally and globally, it is helping us make communities safer by strengthening our early warning system, improving our emergency responses, and of course, identifying important investment towards resilience infrastructure. So what we are trying to do is to, whatever we want to develop moving forward has to be, climate proof, resilient proof. So we are very eager to know what the weather and, the climate information and services is telling us. So if you look at within most of the humanitarian organizations, including Kenya Red Cross, climate change is one of the biggest agenda. Everything we want to do has to be, climate smart, climate change proof and stuff like that. So the information that is coming from Met institution, it's very critical for us as humanitarian actors. And if I dip a bit further, so once we get the weather and climate information and we understand the risk, then this form a very important tool in terms of resilience development. And the challenge we are having, sorry about the noise from, we are closer to Wilson Airport. So the challenges we are having as humanitarian organization is, as we make step further towards or the frequency of the severity of climate and weather-related hazards is actually taking us backwards. So we are making 10 steps forward, but again, we are making 100 steps backward because of especially the most vulnerable communities out of this vulnerable situation. But more importantly, also, we're not sustaining our development gain as a country. So, of course, Kenya Red Cross has been the forefront in terms of, trying to take advantage of the improved science in terms of climate and information services to be able to develop systems that are anticipatory, so that we stop being a reactive institution to a proactive institution. But we're also very much aware that for us to be able to make all this investment, we really have to have what we call, as a layman, I'll speak, the skill of focus. So we have to be sure that the focus we are working with is actually saying what it's saying, and it's going, we're not going to be acting in vain, because the more we act in vain, the more we lose the trust. And I'm sure KMD is aware of those challenges regarding gaining this trust of the users based on forecast. However, we're also aware that forecast is a probabilistic prediction, and we need to understand what that means in terms of decision taking and, of course, investments moving forward. So it is very clear that more than ever now that we are facing growing risk regarding to climate and weather-related hazard, and we need to act quickly in terms of strengthening our meteorological and hydrological institution. And Kenya Red Cross has been the forefront trying to push, the donor community and any other institution that is leveraging or needs information or weather information from the Met departments to think around enhancing this institution to be able to give us what we need. So that we are demanding more than what they can offer, but we're not giving much in terms of enhancing their capacity. And the call for Kenya Red Cross this morning is to donors, to government institutions, to think around enhancing the capacity of the Met departments and Met institutions locally and regionally towards their infrastructure, their capacity, so that they're able to give us what we're looking for in terms of climate and weather information, so that we can take the best decision forward, but more importantly, sustain our development gains and get our community out of that vulnerable situation. So we need to as much as we say that the cost of modernization and enhancing the capacity of Met Department is expensive, I think the bigger picture is the cost of the losses we are going through as a country is much, much more. And we really need to invest in our Met Department moving forward. And what is important for us and also the Met Department and other stakeholders here this morning is that we're able to deliver the needs of the most affected and vulnerable population, the need for them to stay alive and be protected, the need for them to anticipate and have agencies, the need for them to be self-reliant and more resilient to future shocks should make us not sleep even one night without thinking, how can we enhance the climate and weather information that we're getting from Met Department to be able to move forward. And I hope as we embark on this journey of enhancing resilience, more investment needs to go to this institution to enhance the climate information services that come from there for us to be able to move forward as a country. So on that note, I wish all of us the best as we discuss further and unpack what is coming ahead of us in terms of the weather and climate for this particular season. But more importantly, to just urge our colleagues, especially from KMD and WRA and KMD, that a lot of institutions and a lot of people, including private sector and even the local community, are depending on what you guys are producing, are depending on the information you're giving us. There is so much at stake that comes from you. And as much as you're having challenges regarding infrastructure development and also investment, just know that a lot of things in this country, the economy, the livelihoods, and just for us to stay alive, depend on what you give us and what you do for us. So thank you so much and all the best to all of us. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Madam Halima. It's good that we've heard from you that you are really talking with our donors or your donors to enhance capacity to national Met services, specifically KMD. Thank you very much, and we still wish to ask you to continue doing the same so that at least we can be moved higher than where we are in terms of our capacities, in terms of infrastructure, human resource, and all that. I think I like the way Red Cross has really been working with us, and therefore we really wish and continue working with you. Thank you very much for your kind remarks. I now invite Madam Director Stella Aura to make her remarks and then open the workshop. Thank you. Madam, unmute, please.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were hearing me. Thank you, Mr. Masika. I want to recognize Dr. Halima of the Red Cross, Kenya Red Cross, and to appreciate the collaboration that we've been having with the Kenya Red Cross. We work very closely. I want to recognize ICPAC, representatives of ICPAC, representatives of the Ministries of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, Water and Irrigation, Environment and Forestry, Devolution and ASALs, Interior and Internal Coordination, Development Partners, and civil society organizations, all stakeholders of weather and climate information, my colleagues at KMD, including those in the counties, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The role of the Kenya Meteorological Department is to provide timely and accurate weather and climate information and services to all socioeconomic sectors, including agriculture, forestry, water resources management, aviation, the private sector, industry, commerce, and public utilities for the better exploitation and utilization of natural resources for national development. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change has given rise to increased frequency and magnitude of extreme climate events, such as droughts and floods in Kenya and globally. These events have led to loss of lives, diminished livelihoods, reduced crop and livestock production, and damaged infrastructure, among other adverse impacts. The economic impacts of weather and climate-related extremes and the costs of these to the growth and development of Kenya are already significant. The torrential rains and severe flooding that were witnessed in the country from March to May 2018, September to November 2019, and February to June 2020, devastating whole communities, most of which were already struggling to recover from a prolonged drought, are examples of these extreme events. We all still remember the rising water levels in the Rift Valley lakes that remained high in 2020 up to 2021, destroying communities and infrastructure and reversing all development gains in the affected areas. Today, the Kenya Meteorological Department plays a critical role in nearly all facets of life in Kenya. The objective of the National Climate Outlook Forum is to enhance meaningful interaction between the producers and users of climate information at the national level. The NCOF is a user interface platform and is a key pillar of the National Framework for Climate Services, which is being developed by KMT and partners. The National Framework for Climate Services, once developed, shall coordinate institutions and enable them to work together to co-design, co-produce, communicate, deliver, and use climate services for decision-making in climate-sensitive socioeconomic sectors. The theme of this third National Climate Outlook Forum, which is leveraging weather and climate information for resilience building, seeks to address the challenges faced by weather and climate users in the country today. I have the honor to note that present at this forum are representatives of the critical institutions of the country that are adversely affected by weather and climate hazards. I am sure that the recommendations from this workshop will provide support to planning and decision-making in the critical socio-economic sectors of the country. Ladies and gentlemen, collaboration is key to the growth of any institution, and therefore the department is keen to build and ensure collaboration with all its stakeholders to enhance the uptake of net information in the country. The work you're doing here today is very important as it feeds into the weather outlook for the October, November, December 2021 and support various socioeconomic sectors in their planning and decision-making processes. KMD appreciates the contributions and partnerships in the NCOF process and looks forward to continued collaboration. And I want to take this opportunity once again to appreciate the collaboration we have had for many years with the Kenya Red Cross and ICPAC. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to wish you all fruitful deliberations during this workshop. It is my pleasure to declare this third National Climate Outlook Forum officially open. Thank you very much and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Madam Director, KMD, for your remarks and opening the workshop. It is now at 9:30, and then given that we are late by about 10 minutes, I wish to take this opportunity to welcome you to the next session, which is about feedback on performance and the impacts of OND 2020. And the moderator here will be David Andengu. I now hand over this to David Andengu to moderate the next two sessions. David Andengu, please.
Thank you, Mr. Masika. Thank you also the director, those wonderful remarks. The next session is supposed to be actually feedback on the performance of March, April, May. I think there was an error in the program. Sorry for that. Supposed to be March, April, May, and even June, July, August, because we are talking of this year. Also argue that those who have not labeled their, I don't know, their icons or their names, because you can see somebody called HP, another one called Poreno. So please label your name so that you can know who is in the house. Thank you. Now, the next session is, the next presentation is on verification. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. The next presentation is on verification of MAM and June-July 2021 season of focus for Kenya by Hannah Kimani from KMD. Hannah Kimani, please come on board. And also urge the rapporteurs to take notes of the important points, please. Hannah Kimani, it's your turn.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Debu, please confirm that I'm audible and you can see my screen.
Yes, you are audible, loud and clear. You can see your screen. Just put in PowerPoint if possible.
Okay. So my name is Hannah Kimani, and I'm going to take us through the verification for the March to May and June to August rainfall performance in Kenya. We start by looking at the month by month performance of the rainfall. And the month of March was mainly characterized by long spells over several parts of the country, except few areas over the western sector, central parts, and including Nairobi. Sunny and dry conditions prevailed over the northwest, northeast, the coastal strip, and most of southeast. The country recorded depressed rainfall, except only one station, that is Meru, that recorded above normal rainfall at 172.8% of its MAM long-term mean. Eldoret, Embu, and Nyeri also recorded near average rainfall. Despite the depressed rainfall, we had isolated severe storms over various parts, like for example, Meru recorded 140.6 millimeters in 24 hours on 20th March. Kangema in Murang'a County recorded 98.0 millimeters on 29th March. Looking at what happened in April, we had occasional rainfall over a few counties in the western sector and central parts of Nairobi and parts of the southeastern lowlands. But the northwest, the northeast, and the coastal strip continued to record sunny and dry weather conditions. Most meteorological stations recorded rainfall that was below average. Kisumu and Wilson are the only stations that recorded above normal rainfall with 135.4% and 125.7% of their April long-term mean. Dagoretti, Moi Air Base, Kericho, Mandera, Thika, Kakamega, Kisii, Voi, JKA, Embu, and Eldoret recorded near average rainfall. The rest of the stations recorded below 75% of their April long-term mean, that is below rainfall. In April, we also had isolated cases of heavy rainfall over a few areas. An example is Suba Station that recorded 87.5 millimeters in 24 hours on 24th of April, and also Dagoretti that recorded 57.5 millimeters on 10th April. Looking at May, the first half of May was characterized by rainfall over most parts of the country, except Garissa that recorded no rainfall at all throughout the month. Several meteorological stations recorded near average to above average rainfall, except stations over the northeast and the coast that recorded below average rainfall. We also had isolated cases of heavy rainfall recorded over a few areas during the first and second weeks of May. Dagoretti again recorded 94.5 millimeters in 24 hours, and Eldoret reported 67.2 and 66.2 millimeters of rainfall on 7th and 8th May, respectively. Looking at what we issued for the March, April, May 2021, the western sector, including the Lake Victoria Basin, highlands west of the Rift Valley, the south, central and south Rift Valley, the northwest, highlands east of the Rift Valley, and parts of the southeastern lowlands, we expected above average rainfall. But what was recorded in those areas what was recorded in these areas is near average rainfall, with the exception of Lodwar, Eldoret in Uasin Gishu County, and also in Meru that recorded above average rainfall. But I want to point out that even as these three stations recorded above average rainfall, the rainfall was very poorly distributed because, like, for example, for Lodwar, the whole of March, we experienced dry conditions. April, we had 2.0 millimeters of rainfall. And the rainfall that was recorded was in the first 2 weeks of May. And that's when we recorded isolated storms in like about 5 days. When you come to Eldoret, March and April also remained majorly dry. We experienced heavy rainfall in Eldoret, like we have seen in the previous slide, 2 consecutive days of above 60 millimeters of rainfall. So also in Eldoret, most of the rain was recorded in the first 2 weeks of May. In Meru, we have seen that there was a day in March where we recorded 146 millimeters of rainfall in only 24 hours. So even if we recorded above normal rainfall in these 3 stations, the distribution was very poor. When you come to the northeastern parts of the country, in the forecast, we had gone for below average rainfall, and that is what was recorded in most of the northeastern parts of the country. Over the coast, we had gone for near average rainfall, but what was recorded was below average rainfall. This is this is the MAM 2021 rainfall totals against the MAM long-term means. And just like we have seen in the previous slides, most of the country reported near average to below average rainfall, with highly depressed rainfall recorded over the coastal parts of the country. As you can see, they were not anywhere near their MAM long-term means. And also over the northeastern parts of the country, we also seeing highly depressed rainfall, as we have seen in the previous slides. Moving on, in these plots, the red diamonds are where the MAM 2021 observed rainfall. Anything falling in the boxes shows that we had normal rainfall. Anything below the boxes is below normal rainfall, and the endpoints of the whiskers shows the historical extremes. Of interest is the southeastern lowlands, that is of Voi, where we are seeing that in MAM 2021, it recorded the lowest ever rainfall for MAM in history. Coming also to the northeastern and the coastal parts of the country, we also seen stations like Lamu, Sabaha, Mtwapa, and Mombasa also recording the lowest ever MAM rainfall in history. That is, since the stations were started, those stations have recorded the lowest ever rainfall during MAM 2021. Over the highlands west of the Rift Valley and Northwest, we did not have any stations that recorded the lowest ever rainfall in MAM, but most of the stations, as you can see, reported near average to below average rainfall. Looking at what happened in June, July, August, the month of June was characterized mainly by dry weather conditions over northeast, southeast, and northwest. And just to mention that during the June, July, August season, the rainfall is usually recorded in the western parts of the country and also over the coastal regions. Near average to below average rainfall was also experienced in the month of June over the western sector and along the coast. However, Eldoret, Nyahururu, Nakuru, and Embu recorded above average rainfall at between 134.8% to 145% of the July long-term means. In the month of August, near average to below average rainfall was experienced over the western sector and also along the coast. Looking at the forecast that we had issued for the June, July, August, we had issued a near average to above average rainfall over the western sector, including parts of the northwestern sector. What was realized on the right is near average rainfall to below average rainfall over the western sector. We had also issued below average rainfall over the coastal strip, and that is what was realized along the coastal strip. The rest of the country, even though we experienced dry weather conditions, we experienced below average rainfall, and over highlands east and Nairobi County and parts of southeast, we had gone for cool and cloudy conditions, and that is what was realized in most parts of those areas. Looking at the June, July, August rainfall totals against their June, July, August LTMs, again we see over the western sector we had near average to below average rainfall, Over the coastal strip, we also had highly depressed rainfall, except Lamu, that recorded near average rainfall. If you look at a station like Mombasa, and remembering that we have also had the lowest rainfall ever in a station like Mombasa, we are also seeing during the June, July, August, we recorded highly depressed rainfall. And this can clearly be seen from this other plot, where we are seeing that Mombasa and Kitale recorded the lowest ever rainfall during the JJA 2021 season. Looking at the temperature forecast, this is what we had issued on the left. We had issued near average rainfall, near above average temperatures over most parts of the country, with increased probabilities over the eastern sector. And this is what was realized, the JJA 2021 temperature anomalies. An anomaly is a deviation from the norm. In this case, a deviation from the mean temperatures that are usually experienced during the June, July, August season. As we can see on the left, most stations recorded above average temperatures, and with very high increased probabilities over Mandera and also over Mombasa, just like what we had issued in the forecast. The only station that recorded below average rainfall is Embu, that is over the eastern sector of the country. For a summary of what happened, we are seeing that near average to below average rainfall was recorded over the western sector, central and parts of northeast and southeastern lowlands during MAM 2021. Below average rainfall was recorded over the coast and much of northeast. And just to point out that over the coast and northeast, we had during the MAM season, we had some of those stations recording below 30% of their MAM long-term mean. The lowest was recorded in Lamu at 11.9%, followed by Mtwapa at 11.9%, Mombasa at 17.0%, and over the northeast, Garissa and Marsabit recorded 21.6 and 29.4% of their long-term means. The distribution was poor, both in time and space, with the season being characterized by long, dry spells, especially in March and April. Most stations over the coast recorded the lowest ever MAM totals in 2021. Stations over the coast and parts of northeast, just like I've said, recorded below 30% of their MAM long-term means. The onset of the seasonal rainfall was late over most parts of the country, except over the western sector and parts of the highlands east, where the onset was as forecasted. Near average to below average rainfall was recorded over the western sector and parts of southeast during the JJA 2021. Below average rainfall was recorded over the rest of the country. Above normal temperatures were recorded over most parts of the country during the JJA season, as had been predicted. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Hannah, for that presentation. It's been very well presented. I know there are a lot of questions, but I think probably you can ask your question in the chat. We have a lot of experts in the house. Hope they can be able to respond to them. The experts from NMC, the National Meteorological Center, also from the research. So if you have any question, please just ask in the chat, it will be answered. Now, the next presentation is overview of the impacts experienced in the MAM and June, July, August from the sectors. So I think we have some of the sectors on board. Probably could start with the, I'm told agriculture is not ready. So Onchiri from disaster risk management, if you could upload your presentation to be very okay. Then also Kenjen from Willis Ocheng from Energy and Water, just prepare just in case. Then we have also agriculture there, maybe they could be joining us in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, for giving us a chance to present. My name is Onchiri Anyeni. I'm currently the head of technical services department at the National Disaster Management Unit. Now, for this first segment of our presentation, my colleague, Dr. Nyende, will be taking us through the impacts of MAM and June, July, August 2021 seasonal forecast. Then I'll come in later after the OND. I'll come in to present on issues. So my colleague David, Dr. David, please. I hope you can see the presentation. Adegu, can you see the slides?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Thank you, Director. Dr. David, please go ahead.
You can see the presentation. Sorry for the connection problem, but you can see your presentation. Please just go ahead.
Adegu, as I said before, my colleague, Dr. David, will be doing this presentation. Dr. David, please go ahead. Very much.
We are not hearing you, David Nyende. Please just unmute.
Unmute, please.
We can't still hear you, David. Please, can you try to unmute?
I have unmuted.
Now you can be heard. Try again.
We can hear you. We can hear you now.
Am I clear now? Hello,
Dr.
colleagues.
Yes,
now you're
Dr. In a scale of 5, you're coming strength 5. Please go ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to make this presentation, the MAM JJA season impacts, and for the DRM sector. Next slide, Amos. We have already been told about the dry spell that we had in the March, the delayed onset of the rains, and then the depressed rainfall in most parts of the country. And at the same time, when the rains came, we had floods in many other parts of our country as well in the month of April and May, as reported by the earlier presenter. Next. So the impacts for the DRM sector is that first we had the wet conditions in the western parts of the country, the central parts of the country, which is good for cropping and pasture production. But then it was not, it was short-lived in a way. We also had floods and flash floods in western part of the country, Bungoma, Kakamega, the Rift Valley, Bomet, Narok. In the eastern part of the country, Kitui, Machakos, Nairobi, and then the Nyanza region, where we had in Mohoma Bay and Migori. In total, we had 73 people succumbing to this hazard. 5 were injured, 1 reported to be missing, 7,485 households displaced, and a total of 40,000 of our population was affected. Then there was also lightning strike in Kericho and Kakamega counties, where we had 1 person dead and 4 injuries. Also during this season, because of the heavy rains, there was a structural collapse in Kakamega County, where we had 5 people succumbing and 8 injuries. We also had landslides reported in Kiambu, Machakos, Muranga, and Makueni, where we had 2 people dead and then 10 households displaced. During this period, as we have already been told, the dry spell set in. The crop that had been planted in the western part and the North Rift was because of the dry spell, it resulted into the wilting. And the drought in the northern part of our country and the northeastern part of our country continued and seriously affecting our population. Next. So there are a number of interventions that we were carried out. Immediately after the forecast was made, we prepared advisories for the relevant sectors and disseminated them accordingly. And then we also had sensitization meetings together with our partners in the counties and the local leaders in specifically in areas that were considered to be hotspots for the various hazards. And then at this point, we had the activation of various contingency plans. And specifically for this case, we had the activation of the flood contingency plan. And then we carried on the hazard monitoring, especially with the special attention to the vulnerable communities. Stockpiling of various drugs and vaccines were carried out by the concerned sector, both for humans and for livestock. Emergency relief food distribution and non-food items continued. This one was being done especially in areas that were affected by the drought. And then provision of shelter to displaced families, particularly those ones that had been displaced by the flooding. Next slide. All right. Then proceeding on to the JJA season, the severe drought continued, affecting 10 ASAL counties. By the end of August, we had 1.4 million people at risk of acute food insecurity, drying up of water, of surface water sources in the ASAL counties of our country. Then at the same time, being a country of contrast, we had flooding in Budalangi, in Busia County, where we had 800 households displaced. And then there were strong winds. This one is recorded in Kakamega County. And then there were also the swelling of rivers following heavy rains in those counties that are named in the slide. And in total, we had 23 people being reported to have died. Next slide. Okay, so the interventions that were carried out during the JJM, sensitization meetings were also carried out. And then the continuous rapid assessments, particularly by our counterparts at the NDMA, they carried out continuous rapid assessments, but to find out the unfolding situations, scenarios due to drought. Cash transfers were also carried out to 113,000 households in the drought-stricken counties, and then the provision of food aid and provision of food and shelter to flood victims. Next. Just an illustration of the situation that we encountered, that is flash floods in Kibra. Next one, please. And then that is in Migori County. Then another one. And then that is the final slide. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Daktari. Mr. Degu, that marks the end of the first segment of our presentation from the disaster risk management sector. We get the mic back to you.
Thanks so much, Dr. David Nanyende and your colleagues from disaster risk management. I think you are doing a very good job, and thank you for the intervention you are undertaking to take care of climate. And I think also that you've responded very fast on this request to have a presentation. I know the time was short, But we really appreciate your collaboration and continuous support. Thanks so much. The next is the water and the energy sector, just to share with us the impacts they experienced in MAM and June, July, August situation, 2021. And about the energy, Willis, are you on board?
Okay, thank you, David. Yes, I am on board. Let me just share the presentation. I hope we can all see my presentation.
Yes, we can see. Just put it in PowerPoint. Thank you.
Yes, I put it in PowerPoint. Yes, okay. Welcome, everyone. So this presentation is for water and energy sector. And as you can see, we prepared it with my colleague from Ministry of Water and Sanitation. That is Mr. Philip Muraguri. So the situation analysis of the impacts during the MAM, the JJA period, as we are yet to reach September. So this will just give an highlight of some negative and positive impacts. To begin with, this is just how the forecast was for MAM 2021, which had been presented by the presenter, which was before the first presenter. Now, giving a feedback on overview of the impacts experienced during MAM, we realized that we received the MAM forecast for Kenya from KMD in February, which was timely. Then this was followed by monthly updates from KMD to help us adjust in any case small variations here and there. And we also continued to receive 5-day and 7-day updates also from KMD. And the dissemination has been done through email and also media, that's TV and radio station. There are also some WhatsApp groups for sharing this information. And also, if you get to the KMD website, you'll be able also to receive this information. Then we also noticed that we started receiving rainfall late April throughout the country, some areas even early May. Then looking at the positive impacts which were experienced during the MAM were opportunities for water harvesting for the rain which came, though it didn't last for very long, but there was an opportunity to harvest this rainwater for use in different areas. Then the most of the areas, especially the hydropower plants, received near normal inflows. And this was particularly in western part of Kenya. Western part of Kenya, we talk about Sondu and Takwel, and also maybe Migori, which is a small hydropower plant. Then the Takwel levels also remain high since the previous rainfall, which actually resulted into even a water level rise in several lakes in the country. Then looking at negative impacts, there was decreased water levels in lakes, dams, and water ponds. And this has been across, looking at Lake Victoria, the Rift Valley lakes, and then very low recharge, which is 10 to 30% to open water sources, especially in Kitui, Wajir, Isiolo, Tana River, and pastoral areas of Garissa. And you can see on my right, or on your right on the screen, you can see like Shimbali shallow wells in Garissa, which are going up to about 2 meters deep for you to get water. Then there was also disruption of water supply services, especially in the ASAL areas. E.g., about 70 to 90% of water ponds have dried up in Isiolo, Wajir, and pastoral areas also of Garissa and Tana River. Then these areas also received below normal inflows. Okay, not below normal inflows really, but the hydropower plants in the eastern part of Kenya, that is the Seven Forks and some other small hydros in the Upper Tana, received below normal inflows. Now, looking at the lakes, actually we have sampled some few not lakes, but rivers. We have sampled some few rivers, that River Nanyuki, Tiba, Pekera, and Sondu. And you can see the flows actually peaked around May. Yeah, almost all of them, the flows peaked around May, maybe with an exception of Pekera, which has remained almost constant throughout. And that's how some of the rivers actually performed. So you can witness that there were no much high flows during these periods. Then looking at Lake Naivasha, you can see Lake Naivasha has been decreasing now constantly. And this is a representation of what is happening even in other lakes around the country. Then looking at the hydropower reservoirs, you can only see with an exception of maybe around the month of May, where we received some little rainfall. Then after that, the falling water levels, even in the hydropower reservoirs, has actually continued. Then the strategies which were taken to maximize on the positive impacts included the construction of water plants in various parts of the country, water harvesting, then monitoring of water levels in rivers and reservoirs, provision of water storage tanks, and more hydropower output in Takwel hydropower plant. The Takwel hydropower plant, since the level is still very high, so we have continued to maximize on that to ensure the western part of Kenya gets adequate power for consumption. Then strategies undertaken to mitigate the negative impacts included water tracking, desiltation of water ponds, rehabilitation of water supply infrastructure, because these are the time when actually the water levels were a bit low. And a good example is even for Masinga, when we had to take even remedial works to repair some part of the spillway which was damaged during the heavy rains of 2020. Then one of the measures which were taken also is reduction of hydropower output for conservation purposes in Seven Forks. So we only utilize hydro to try and support the system to ensure we have stable supply of electricity throughout the country. That's all we had for you from water and energy sector. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Willis, for that presentation and for the good work you are doing for the country, and also for the short notice that we gave you, but you have responded. Thanks so much for that. I think any question you can ask on the chat, and then Willis can answer. And so on. So the next presentation is supposed to be from agriculture, but I'm told she is not yet ready. Agriculture is not yet ready. Hope she'll join us in a few minutes. Then health. Anton Wainaina, is he on board, Wainaina? Anthony? At the agriculture, they seem to be not ready, so probably we should allow for the other presentation. If they join, then they can present. They join, then they can present. So instead of wasting time, we can go to the next session. It's climate information for resilience building. I think the moderator is supposed to be Dr. Muita. Dr. Muita. And then if the health and agriculture have something to say, then they'll say after these other two presentations or three presentations. Thank you. Wita.
And David.
Yes.
It looks like Moita is not logged in. I have gone through the, so maybe you can.
I can continue maybe for a few minutes. Then there's a presentation called focus-based financing for resilience building. I think this is from Red Cross. These are very important.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Muita. Yeah?
Oh, Muita. Okay, you can go on for the next session. Then I'll take over. just to allow the director guys to present.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm on the road, but I'll start off by first appreciating the organizers of this NCOF, and would gladly go ahead and moderate this session. And we have a number of presenters, and I'll straight on go to the first presenter, which is Kenya Red Cross, being led by Dr. Halima. So kindly, it's your opportunity. Proceed. If you have any queries as presentation proceeds, you can put your questions on the chat. Thank you.
Dr. Muita.
Hello, yes, please.
I hope you're not driving as you moderate. We don't want an accident.
Yeah, actually, I'm parked along the road.
Can Adegu assist you with that session?
Well, yeah, that can also be okay.
Adegu, please take over. Adegu?
Yes, I think we can continue. Thanks so much, Director.
Okay,
let's have Red Cross uploading their presentation. Red Cross. Yes, thank you so much, Alma.
Good morning.
Morning.
Give me a minute.
There's a lot of echo. Maybe you have two gadgets.
Hello? Is it okay now?
Yes, now it's okay.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes,
hello?
Better now. Just go ahead.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello.
we get you.
All right, sorry, I was using two gadgets. My apologies. So I wanted to present from my laptop. So good morning once again. I was asked to briefly speak about the work we are doing around focus-based financing. And in general, we are just leveraging on climate information services towards our efforts of enhancing disasters to the most vulnerable population. And if you see my first slide, there is something that looks like a path, which is an indication that resilience is a journey. It's not a one-stop shop. I think the effort started many years ago, and this term resilience has been in our programming, in our in our workshops, in our conferences, in our day-to-day business, in terms of enhancing the resilience of the most vulnerable community. And with regards to this particular workshop today, in terms of downscaling the OND season, I think it's just important for us to remind ourselves that the weather and climate related disasters has been on the increase. If you compare what was happening or what has been happening the last few years, if you look at 1975 to 1985, we were having people being affected in thousands, but currently we are talking about millions. So you can see as much as the science is advancing, the effort is increasing, the impacts of climate change is actually fighting harder. So we are actually in a battle as we speak. The frequencies are increasing, the intensity is increasing, and of course, the most impacted moving forward is the most vulnerable population. It's threatening our lives, and you can see the previous presenters have presented just this current season, the number of lives that we've lost. It's impacting on our livelihoods, it's impacting on our properties, and more importantly, it's impacting on our development gains as we work towards Vision 2030, as we work towards sustainable development goals, and even the Big Four agenda for the current government. You can see we are actually in a battle. So of course, critically, our resilience building efforts is under threat. So how are we leveraging, or how are we trying to move forward regarding this particular situation? So yeah, as it's been indicated, you can see in 2018, we had floods. just to see how the frequency is increasing. In 2019, we had floods. In 2020, we had floods. And of course, in 2021, we had floods. But now we're also speaking about drought and other disasters. So we are not catching a break because of the frequency and the severity of these particular events. And a lot of evidence is showing that this is being enhanced because of the impacts of climate change. So again, as I said, for every challenge, there's always an opportunity. And as we try to struggle with what is happening globally as well as locally, the humanitarian sector and Kenya Red Cross has not been left behind. We are moving away from being a reactive humanitarian organization to more of a proactive. And you can see previously when the help used to come. The help used to come when the disaster has happened. And if you see even with the current situation, we're getting into drought appeals. But the signs were very clear, even beginning of the year, on how the previous season of OND 2020 had performed and where we were going as a country. But still, we are still waiting until our communities are very vulnerable. And now we put a lot of resources with regards to response. So of course, we have agreed that the frequencies are increasing, the intensity is increasing, and we are dealing with extreme events. And of course, the impact on the most vulnerable is also increasing. However, all is not lost. We can leverage on this particular situation by strengthening our early warning systems and becoming a critical component of disaster risk reduction. Are we able to reduce the risk? Are we able to understand who is at and what is at risk? Are we able to see the risk, anticipate, and take action well in advance? So with respect to these current floods or the current drought we are going through as a country, were there any telltale signs that were, we could see well in advance, and were we able to do something about it? And what is the challenge? Why are we not doing something about it? And we have to get into this particular situation to be able to do something. So, so at the Kenya Red Cross Society, and not just at the Kenya Red Cross Society, most humanitarian organizations within this particular part of the world, but also globally, we are really embarking on actually understanding the emerging. As we are familiar with the existing risks, we're also trying to see what we can do in terms of understanding emerging risks, how we can actually seamlessly access to monitor and get early warning information. And that's why, of course, the hydro and the meteorological institutions are very critical. And how can we leverage with this information to enhance our preparedness? How can we ensure that our response capacity is strengthened? How can we invest more in anticipatory approaches so that we're able to take actions way in advance, we're able to plan and along these predictive challenges and predicted risks? And of course, more importantly, how can we ensure that all this is anchored in a policy environment that is supportive and of course sustaining funding? We know in Kenya we don't have a disaster risk management law as we speak, and because of this we have ad hoc ways of doing business. And now at the end of the day, even if the forecast comes, even if KMD and other institutions told us in advance early in the year or late last year that the situation is not as good as we thought, we don't have an enabling environment for us to take a lot of decisions and take actions. And more importantly, we don't have enabling environment with regards to funding for anticipatory, funding for early action. The current funding we have is for emergency. So we have to get to emergency, and we really have to end, flood emergencies and drought emergencies. And I'm glad that NDMA has a big program that is trying to end drought emergency. And the only way we can be ending such emergencies is leveraging on the focus of science and be able to be very predictive and take actions when in advance, put our investment by anticipating what is going to come and looking back at the historical impacts of what has happened. So at the Kenya Red Cross Society, what we are trying to do with other partners is trying to strengthen what we call an end-to-end early warning information. And this has 4 components. And if you look at these 4 components, what is coming from KMD and other hydrological and meteorological institutions is at the critical aspect of forecast. Once we know who and what is exposed, or who and what is at risk with regards to weather and climate related hazards and where they are, of course, we will still need to get information, get early warning. And this comes from other critical stakeholders, but more importantly, the Met Department, and so that we can anticipate what is coming, anticipate the impacts. And now you see the need of us actually investing more in impact forecasting. We need to know what the weather is going to do and not just only what the weather is going to look like. And then, of course, enhancing things around effective communication. This is not our stakeholders' responsibility. We have to ensure that what is coming from KMD is understandable, it's actionable, we can actually take actions. And I know the Met Science is really pushing for the probabilistic aspect of the weather and climate forecast, but it's important for us now to unpack that so that the users can understand what these probabilities are mean. When we say it's 80% chance, do we prepare for 80? Do we prepare for both 80 and the 20%? How do we plan ourselves moving forward? And more importantly, how do we communicate this so that we can take the appropriate actions? And more importantly, now taking the action, and this is where now we come. And you can see now the humanitarian sector, such as Kenya Red Cross, is not just waiting to take action. We are now participating in all the aspects of the early warning system. And we try to understand who's at risk, but also we try to work with the Met and hydrological departments and institutions to give us the focus that we think we can use. We are trying to work with other stakeholders to ensure effective communication, but more importantly, to take the action. So as I said earlier, this cannot happen if we don't have an enabling policy environment. We don't have sustainable funding to our institutions. We're not able to activate the funds when we need it, so that we're able to do the right thing at the right time. So that has to happen. So as we push for the forecast, as we push for enhancing the forecast, we also have the responsibility to work with the stakeholders and especially the decision makers to ensure that we are advocating for an enabling environment. If there's a way that KMD has to be supported in terms of certain facilities, we have to find a way of advocating for that. If we need KenGen to be facilitated in a certain way, or WRA or any other stakeholders, we need to really, really advocate. So as the practitioners, we are the ones who understand the challenges on the ground, and we cannot get tired in terms of advocating and influencing the decision makers to ensure that our environment is conducive for us to take actions to ensure that our communities are able to protect lives and livelihoods. So I was asked this morning to speak about the anticipatory or the focus-based financing, and I thought it was very important to start with the background and how do we come into the focus-based financing situation. And of course, what we are leveraging now moving forward is, of course, the advances in the climate science. So it's important to note that we cannot work without the climate scientists, and more importantly, of course, the meteorological department. So we try to see if we can leverage on the forecast. If we have good forecasts available months in advance, we are trying to push to see, instead of us getting the forecast, for example, towards end of August or beginning of September, is it possible to get earlier than that? So that as we plan for the seasonal forecast, can we also plan for more than the seasonal forecast 6 months in advance? Because right now we already know that OND doesn't look very good, but we have communities who are already vulnerable. So when is the right time to get the information to plan better? That is something we need to think around. Do we need to get information all around the clock? Like as we get the monthly, the weekly, the daily, how else do we need to package this information so that we can continuously take the right actions moving forward? So of course, within the Kenya Red Cross Society and the movement at large, we are leveraging on something called the window of opportunity, and that is the time between the forecast and the disaster. And as we release the forecast tomorrow, for the seasonal forecast tomorrow, we are hoping to take advantage of that before we get into severe situation. Or when the forecast was released, for example, for the MAM 2021, were we able to take actions between that MAM before the OND for us to be able to ensure that our communities are not now experiencing malnutrition, food insecurity, and loss of lives and livelihood as we move forward. So we are anchoring this particular approach called focus-based financing on the window of opportunity so that we can take actions within this particular point instead of taking the actions after. So moving away from being a reactive to a proactive institution. So of course, this is dependent on a credible warning. So of course, what we are getting from the forecasters is very critical, because people are going to allocate, people are going to come up with action, but people are also going to allocate funds. And I don't think there's anyone in this world who wants to put money where they know they're going to lose. So we really have to ensure that we are working with credible warning, credible information, credible forecast to be able to invest in this kind of a system. And so what we are trying to enhance in terms of anticipatory action within the movement is to develop something called focus-based financing. So as we leverage on the focus, we also want to ensure that funds are allocated in advance so that when the focus is reached or the threshold, And you see, we monitor what is happening in the hydrometeorological forecast. You see now you are critical stakeholders, and that's why you can see Kenya Red Cross is really doing their best to try and partner and strengthen what is coming from this particular stakeholder, so that we know, is the danger level exceeded or not exceeded? Do we need to take actions, or do we not to take actions? Because at the end of the day, we don't want to engage in things that are making us lose trust on the forecast moving forward. But more importantly, is it important for us also to take what we call no regret actions, so that we continue enhancing the resilience of the most vulnerable communities and also protecting our development gains. So our system is trying to leverage on this particular approach, and to actually ensure that we have funds in advance, so that when we reach a trigger, then we are able to take actions when we advance. So currently we are developing two systems. We finalize on the flood focus-based financing system that is currently targeting Tana, Athi, and Zoia. And we are hoping to get that system approved and funds allocated, so that when we reach a threshold based on the KMD forecast, then we're able to take action in these three basins. We're also finalizing on the drought early FBF system, and we're hoping to be taking actions in the northern and eastern livelihood zones in Kenya moving forward, as we try to enhance our forecast, our indicators, to be able to have a national-wide approach in terms of flooding, managing floods, as well as managing drought in Kenya. However, more needs to be done. We're not out of the woods. So of course, greater coordination across all levels of disaster risk financing. We have a number of financing in the world now. We have the funding within the movement, the Red Cross movement. We have funding from UN OCHA. We have funding from World Bank. There's funding from WFP. There's funding from FAO, and something called the START network in the UK, and they're all funding anticipatory approach. And we are trying to advocate to this particular funding instrument, not just to enhance the work of the humanitarian actors, but also the work of the producers of this forecast moving forward. Sharing of data is critical. Of course, as we develop the triggers to be able to activate this system. In Kenya, we have a national technical working group where critical stakeholders like KMD, WRA, NDMA, NDOC, part of this particular technical working group as we develop this particular system, because the trigger that we are developing has to be co-developed by all the stakeholders in cognizance of what we have now in terms of the skill of focus and the indicators that we have in-house. Of course, we need to promote joint planning across instruments, of course, the funding instruments, as well as the different stakeholders. More importantly, we are advocating to strengthening locally led initiatives and intervention, because a lot of support we are getting across the country, outside the country, from, for example, from the Western world, they are really pushing us to leverage on the global focus, but we are going back to them and saying, no, we want to work with our local stakeholders. We want to ensure that we are actually leveraging on the focus that is released by the mandated institutions. We don't want to duplicate efforts. So we are pushing for this particular kind of initiative, so that we can strengthen the locally led initiative and intervention, more importantly, the mandated institutions, to ensure that we are actually working towards a system strengthening approach and not just one organization. And we are hoping, as we support the national government as well as the county government, as Kenya Red Cross, we are working towards incorporating anticipatory approach, as well as leveraging on the focus in the DRM bills and policies at the national level and the county level, to ensure that we actually, this is also anchored in the law and anchored on policy and anchored with allocations of budget, so that we don't have a problem moving forward. For example, when a threshold is reached and we need to trigger the system, we can't say, oh, who has the power to trigger, who has the power to release the funds. So we're ensuring all this is anchored in the policies as well as the legislations. We're also trying to push to break away from these silos between humanitarian, development, and climate actors or sectors, because either way we cannot work in silos. It is very clear that we need each other and we need to move forward as a team. So that's where we are in terms of Kenya Red Cross with regards to, of course, focus-based financing. And we cannot forget, as I said earlier during the opening remarks, what is important is that we're able to deliver the needs of the most vulnerable population. They need to stay alive. They need to be protected. They need to anticipate. They need to have an urgency and be self-reliant. And more importantly, they need to be resilient to just shocks. Thank you, and over to you, moderator. David.
Thanks so much, Halima, for that wonderful presentation. I think you have really demonstrated the use of climate information for early warning and also for early action. This is very useful. and you have been at the center of this early action activities in Kenya. We really appreciate. Now, the next presentation is I think is the use of actionable focus. Use of actionable focus for resilience by Nelson Mutanda from NDMA. Mutanda, are you on the house?
Thanks, David. Good morning, everyone.
Right.
I hope you can hear me.
Good morning. Good morning. I can hear you. Can hear you.
I'm sure you can also see me now. Oh, okay, fine.
Yes, I can see you now. Yeah.
My colleague from NDOs has already done a very comprehensive presentation. So I'll just take 5 minutes as indicated to make some discussions on how we are using the focus and how we are working with our key partners. For this case, we are looking at a meteorological department. We are also looking at Red Cross. There's so much that is going on in of focus. And more important is that we have been using them. We believe that most of the governments now are facing challenges of resources. And therefore, we believe that the community, as the first responder, they must be equipped with timely information so that they can also put a lot of energy in responding rather than just looking at the government, because sometimes it becomes very, very expensive. So looking at what we are doing as NDMA, our foundation is based on key pillars, particularly in ASAL areas. And one principle is security. The issue of security comes out in most cases, especially when we have these events. Poor infrastructure and also human capital, very, very key. So the focus are really helping us ensure that we equip the community with the timely information and also other stakeholders as we try to bring them together, various players in security, various players in issues of infrastructure, various players in areas of human capital, that is education, health, and nutrition. This information has really helped us because like last season when we received the forecast and we combined with what we are getting also from other players, that is, for example, the Standard Precipitation Index, Vegetation Condition Index, an initiative that we have with the KMD and Kenya Red Cross. We have been discussing with the communities, advising them on the steps to take as the seasons progress. And this has been very, very useful based on the current situation at the moment. So focus have helped vulnerable communities prepare themselves. They have also enabled us update our contingency plans in time. And again, stakeholders are able to identify critical areas where they can invest. And this becomes very, very important for resilience building. So basically, that's what I can say for now. I'll be able to share my short presentation shortly. Over to you, the moderator.
Thanks so much, Nelson, for that input. Looking forward to see the presentation. And I think the things you do are very important for this country in terms of response and also resilient building. Thanks so much. Now, the next presentation is the role of social media in climate information dissemination. The media has been one of our major partners, and I think they play a very major role in terms of dissemination and public awareness. Welcome, Ms. Yani.
Yes, hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving me this chance to make the presentation on the role of the social media when it comes to the climate information dissemination. I hope everybody can be able to see my slide.
Yes, we are able to see.
Thank you. Why do we say social media? The big question is, does KMD need to be on the social media such as Facebook, WhatsApp, and Twitter? And the answer is yes. So everybody should care about social media. And also we know that KMD has been using the already existing old journals of of disseminating of the information, such as use of the radio, use of the parasas. But because of the pandemic, which is the COVID-19, it is very difficult nowadays to arrange the physical meetings of weather dissemination. Now, this calls us to have the social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram when it comes for the weather and the climate information dissemination. So from the last season, which is supposed to come to an end tomorrow, the objective of this work was, first, the case study which we did was digital marketing strategy in weather dissemination and the communication during June, July, August season. So the objective was, number one, to have a timely weather and climate information reaching targeted stakeholders and the user for efficient decision-making on seasonal climate and the weather forecast. Objective number two was to improve the engagement between different users and the producer who are KMD by the use of the social media channels. And also the last objective was to enhance the access and uptake of weather and climate information through the interpretation, packaging, and the repackaging. So everybody knows that effective and timely communication of weather and climate information is very important before, during, and after the release of National Seasonal Weather Outlook. The forecast and advisory product at the national level should be communicated effectively to the end users for appropriate decision making. So from the previous season, that is June, July, August, KMD was able to publish 280 tweets from the month of June, July, and August. Yes?
Your screen is not moving. I don't know why.
Pardon?
Your screen is not moving as you present.
What about now?
Maybe now, yeah.
Oh, sorry for that. So I don't know whether I can continue or I can repeat the objectives.
Repeat the objectives, then we proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ndengwa. So the objective of our work was for the digital marketing strategy in weather dissemination and communication during the June, July, August was, number one, to have a timely weather and climate information reaching targeted stakeholders and the users for efficient decision-making on seasonal climate and weather forecast. The objective number two was to improve the engagement between the users and the producer of weather, that is the KMD, by encouraging use of social media channels. And the number three objective was to enhance the access and uptake of weather and climate information through the interpretation, packaging, and repackaging. So I've already said that from the June, July, August, KMD was able to publish 280 tweets from the month of June, and this is how the arrangement of the tweets was from the beginning of the June, when we released the last season of the June, July, August, up to date. Let's now focus on the impact of these 280 tweets which we published on a monthly basis. In the month of June, we published, out of 280, it was 54 messages. Then we increased the number of tweets up to 121 during the month of July, because this is the month which we realized that most of the Kenyans are being affected by the cold weather season, and everybody was asking a lot of questions. That's why we increased the awareness up to 121. Then coming to this month, the number reduced up to 105, even though we have not come to the end of the August. Then out of 54 tweets of June, the people who visited our profile of the Twitter was 21,300. This is a good number of people. Then this number went up by double, up to 52,100 out of 121 tweets. And also, when it comes to the month of August, the number dropped, even though we have not come to the end of the month, up to 40,900 people who visited our Twitter profile. Then who mentioned us in the month of July, in the month of June? 156 people mentioned our name during this month. Then this number also increased to 254 people who mentioned Kenya Met Department. Then this number also dropped up to 212. Then let's see how these tweets out of 54, how was the impression of our messages to the people? The tweet impression is very important because it gives the total diary of all the times our tweets has been seen. For example, in the month of June, we were able to have 265,000. This is times how often the people have received our messages in this month. The number increased up to 540,000 times. And also the number keeps going up to 713,000. For example, if you compare the month of June with tweets, 121 tweets as compared in an impression of 540,000. So we were expecting that the impression to come down, but because already in the month of June, we created a lot of impact-based information, that's why the impression keeps going up and up and up. Then when it comes to people who liked our message, for example, when we tweet the weather information every day in the morning, in the month of June, 448 people liked our messages. When it comes to the replies, people who replied our messages was 62, while people who retweets our messages was 237. When it comes to the month of July, the number increased from 448 up to 1,081 people who liked our messages on the Twitter accounts. And also the number of people who replied increased up to 121. And the last 3 people who tweets our messages was 661. When it comes to the month of August, whereby we are coming to the end of the season, the number also increased up to 1,317 people who liked our messages on Twitter. And also the people who replied, the messages was 118, and lastly, 671 retweets our messages. Then let's see whether we are gaining the new followers or we are losing the followers. In the month of June, we gained 225 new followers who started following our Twitter account for getting weather and climate information. This number increased up to 562. This is a plus. Then the number also keeps rising up to now. We have 862 new followers. Then out of this, at the moment, we have 30,300 followers who are active on our Twitter accounts. And also, I would like to comment that we were lucky that our Twitter account was verified after we requested, and it took about 80 days. And this is an official government Twitter account with the blue label. Everybody can be able to see on this blue label here. So the next time, maybe I will talk more about the use of social media, especially on the Facebook. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yani. I think social media is a very powerful tool, powerful platform that we can really embrace and disseminate our information. Really, thanks so much for that. Now, time is not on our side, but let me just share a presentation I've received from the Ministry of Agriculture. I don't know if I can be allowed to share.
Kindly do.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I've just received it from Ministry of Agriculture. I'll just read verbatim because of the time. Sorry. This is the focus there that was received from MAM. You're aware of this one. They're saying that the focus reached most of the intended users. Method of information used at national, subnational, and local scales was mainly mass media, such as radio, TV, social media, which we have just seen, and also bulk SMS and WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, and also the agricultural extension services, among them field days, but others, agriculture training centers, Kenya School of Agriculture, etc., among other channels of communication. They're saying that the onset of the season delayed. The rains were expected around end of March, beginning of April, but the onset was realized towards the end of April and early May. That's what they're saying. The main impacts of the MAM 2021 season to the sector was delayed onset, depressed, which is the limited rainfall. Distribution of the rainfall was poorly spread, had serious impact on the staple food such as maize, beans, potatoes, and vegetables. In the region where seasonal focus was near average rainfall, those outputs such as seed, fertilizer, labor costs, and generally the whole season. I think there's some problem there, but we shall share and then you can read. Agriculture sector outcomes impacts were mainly attributed to climate performance. Other factors contributed to the above outcomes was limited communication on advisory, the seasonal focus, limited uptake of the advisory. I think it was a bit done in hurry, but I think we can make some sense from there. MAM 21 summary of positive impacts. They're saying that the rapid growth of crops due to the high temperatures in the region of near average to above normal focus. While the rainfall was focused to be near normal to above average, there was rapid growth of crops due to the high temperatures that had been experienced earlier. Negative impacts, loss of resources, livelihoods, and losing out of expected outcomes. I think this will go to, she didn't fill this part, so that's a bit empty. So I think they are still working on it. I think they'll be able to share the full presentation later on. So thanks so much for the sharing of this information. I know it's limited, but I think it's important that agriculture, which is our main economic sector, it needs to really to have an input into this activity. Thanks so much. So otherwise is that time is around 10:44.
Mr. Deku.
Do we need a break or we can continue?
Mr. Deku. Mr. Deku.
Yes, I can hear you.
Mlonyangole Wilson West Pokot, eh?
Yes.
What about the health sector? Mr. Anthony Wanaina, can you present or later?
Wanaina is working on presentation.
Yes.
Remember that there's some limited time for them to do this work. So he's working on it, and I think later on he can share. I think he has just an SMS. But he's still working on it. And they'll share.
Thank you. Let us have a break then, if it's possible.
So let's have a break of 5 to 7, less than 10 minutes because of time. So please be back by 10:50 or 10:55, please. But you don't need to log out. Just keep on logging in so that we can start at exactly 10:55 for the next session.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hope everybody is now back.
You guys enjoyed your tea break. That is a virtual tea break. So let's get started because we are trying to catch up with the time. And I know there'll be breakout sessions for the sectors for a few minutes. I'm trying to reach the health person so that he can share his presentation. For those who have presented, please share your presentation. I've received several of them. Now, the next session is about OND2021 Climate Outlook, Session 3. I'm handing over to Leonard Chansu to moderate this session. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Bana David Adegu. Yeah, we've had quite very rich contribution from our users. And I think this one has really enlightened us. And we have seen the call is that the demand is to have actionable quality focus. So the next presenter, who is Chris will be presenting on the current state of climate, and then he will also be giving an overview of the OND21 National Climate Outlook. So that is actually, we can say, the climax of the event before we discuss it. I know health will be given a time to discuss when they are giving feedback on the outlook. Probably we may ask them to say something on the past impacts if there will be time. So can we have Chris presenting? Chris?
Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
Yeah, thank you for having me this morning here to present on the upcoming short rain season. As we know, OND is a very critical season, especially for the eastern sector that includes parts of central and southeastern lowlands. And a very, very important season also for the western sector and the bread basket region where harvesting is currently underway. So today we are going to talk about the climate drivers, look at the ENSO and the IOD, which impact on the rainfall over Eastern Africa. Then we will thereafter look at the season. And to start with, of course, we are looking at the equatorial SSTs, which are near to below average across most of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, where we have the ENSO. This is the most recent anomaly. And of course, over the western, the far eastern Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, and of course over almost warmer temperatures across Indonesia, which implies that we are near to below average across a majority of the Pacific. With that, the Pacific SSTs are mostly cooling. That is especially over the eastern sector, in the mid to the east tropical Pacific, and warming over the western around Indonesia. Of course, that constitutes very high chances of ENSO as we go into La Nina or OND. And that, of course, implies dry preference, especially over the Eastern Africa region. So by the time we are in OND, we are likely to have La Nina developing. And that is from most of the models. As you can see, right now we are at in August 30th, and by the time we are into the season, the peak of the season by November, December, we'll have developed La Nina. And of course, that implies very dry weather for much of Eastern Africa. So looking at the situation as at now, you can see it's at negative 0.4, and by next week we'll have the latest value. And similar years, of course, as you can see, are 2016 when we had negative 0.6 by the time we're in December, 0.7 by the time we are in the season. So again, we are likely to see the same scenario from most of the models. So looking at the Indian Ocean dipole, of course, the Indian Ocean dipole now is around the Indian Ocean. And as of now, the index shows that we are currently negative, and most of the models, of course, indicate that it is likely to remain that way. So SSTs are above average in the Eastern Indian Ocean and below in the West. And of course, most of the models are in agreement that we are likely to see negative IOD conditions even into the season. And at the moment, the most recent is about 0.4. And by the time we'll be in November, the mean will be almost at this, will maintain negative IOD status. And that is the same for most of the models. And this is just a summary. By the time we're in September, negative 0.6, 0.6 in October, and 0.5 in November, and 0.3 in December. So then we'll go back to normal. Looking at the Kenya results, of course, this was not done just as a Kenya team. We did it together with other countries because we have to work with the IGAD region. So from what you can see, the most these are the oceanic conditions in the last 3 months. And you can see that 2016, looking at 2016, it is the most probable year that we are likely to have a similar weather pattern. So when you look at the performance of the rains in 2016, you can see much of the country showing below average rainfall. 2001, we had almost near average rainfall. So the most likely scenario is 2016, but this is just to do with having looked at the SSTs for the past 3 months. So this is a bigger image of the same, and you can see much of the country recorded below 75% of the OND average. So 2010 and 2001 almost similar, but better performance in 2001, which was also an analog year. Moving on to the SPI, and we can see we are likely to see even drier conditions from the SPI forecast, which indicates that parts of Western Kenya may see some chances of near normal to above normal for some regions, but generally near to below average conditions are most likely from the SPI forecast. So going on from all the models from the ensemble regression, which mainly look at the local effects of the weather on the forecast. The forecast indicated that the whole region, especially over Eastern Kenya, would receive below average rainfall. Parts of Western Kenya may see near average rainfall. And the scale for that focus is quite good, especially over the eastern sector. And you can see this part of the northeastern, the far northeastern part of the country. Looking at the CPT, this now looks at the global effects. And this much of the country indicates below average rainfall equally. And the scale is quite good again. And on average, for both the ensemble regression and the CPT, we see that below average rainfall is favored for much of the country, and the scale is for the same is very, very good. Moving on, the onset is likely to be late, even going into November for much of the country, and the cessation is equally likely to be early. So we'll talk more about that later. So on average, most parts of the country are predicted to have a higher likelihood of drier than average rainfall. That implies we can see the yellow. So between 40 and 60% confidence. And you can see that for the far northeastern part of the country, there is a chance of below average rainfall, that is at 50%, and near average rainfall at 30%, and chances of above average rainfall at 20%. So there is more confidence for below average rainfall for the far northeastern part of the country. Otherwise, for the rest of the country, still near to below average rainfall over the whole country, especially over the western sector. And the chances of above rainfall, average rainfall are at 20%. So there is increased probabilities of drier than average rainfall for the far northeastern part of the country. Looking on at temperature in the coming forecast, in the upcoming season, warmer than average temperatures, again, also indicated over much of the country, with of course enhanced probabilities over the eastern part of the country. Moving on, the generally warmer than average temperatures are expected over the whole country, and this is the final forecast that we have. We try as much as possible to maintain the objective outlook so that we can be able to easily verify the same at the end of the season. From what we was given across the region, much of Eastern Africa, given the negative IOD status and the predicted La Nina conditions, for the whole region, we are likely to see very depressed rainfall, with of course increased probabilities, especially over parts of Somalia and Kenya. But for the rest of the region, including Tanzania and southern Ethiopia and much of Somalia, we are likely to see below average rainfall. So looking on to the onsets, as you know, in the coming season, for much of Western Kenya, we are likely to see rainfall continuing from September. And the cessation of these rains, though there is a likelihood that we are going to have a very poor distribution, the rains are likely to cease by the time we are in December. Looking on to parts of Narok, as the ITCZ shifts south, the cessation of the rains in Narok and the surrounding regions may be late and may go into January. In the Zone C, this includes parts of Nairobi and the Central Islands. We are likely to see an onset, possibly in the 3rd to the 4th week of October, and an early cessation, possibly in the 2nd to 3rd week. Looking at Zone F, which is this zone around the southeastern lowlands, including parts of the Tana River and Taita Taveta. 4th week to the 1st week of November is the likely onset period, and cessation is likely to be towards the 4th week of December to the 1st week of January. Looking on to the zone, the coastal region. The coastal region, we are likely to see the 2nd to the 3rd week of November, and the cessation is likely to be the 2nd to the 3rd week of December. For the northeastern part of the country, the rains are likely to be there, but the onset is not really defined. We could see some rainfall and thereafter very, very long dry spells. So when you look at the analog years of 2016, 2010, the performance was generally poor over these regions. So in summary, we see that for the areas we are likely to see below average rainfall, marked as Zone 2, this shaded a bit light here. These over several parts of the country. there is depressed rainfall likely and increased probabilities of below or rather highly depressed rainfall for the far northeastern part of the country. So in summary, we've seen that ENSO neutral conditions are present at the moment, and the tropical Pacific is cooling slightly. And models, of course, predict La Nina to redevelop. When I say redevelop, of course, we saw last year again a similar situation where we had La Nina conditions again. So, of course, that favors below average rainfall for much of the country and not just Kenya, for the East African region. The IOD, of course, is currently negative and is likely to remain negative in the coming season. And of course, that gives preference for below average rainfall over the country. The climate outlook, of course, for the OND, of course, for much of the country, we see that most parts of the country are likely to see to experience depressed rainfall. We are likely to see a late onset and an early cessation that really gives sorry. So that really indicates that we are going to have very poor rainfall performance. So again, it will be poorly distributed both in space and time. And in terms of temperature, warmer than average temperatures are predicted across the country. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Chanzu.
Thank you very much. You can get off your slide and let the focus. So I think we have now seen what we are expecting. We have seen what the climate is all about. We have seen the trigger, that is the controllers of our weather, what they mean to us now. So because this is quite important, we will have some 10 minutes of reaction and clarifications before we can go into breakup groups. So now, I now call for reaction from the room. That is if you want some area clarified, and I don't know how we'll do it. Probably you can raise your hand. I don't know whether I will be able to see the hand, but can we see some reaction now from the floor? Besides said at the first one, I've seen your hand.
Thanks, Chris, for the good presentation. I think on the chart for onset, there is confusion between color code in coast and southeastern areas. Maybe a clarification would be good for the same.
Okay, that is noted. I'll share the presentation shortly.
On Chiri, I can see your hand up.
Chanzu, and thank you very much, my good friend Chris. Again, I'd like to reiterate the same issue as just talked about. Those colors, especially myself, have a problem. So please, if you may simplify and try to probably characterize the regions, maybe by names or something, it becomes more clearer for we disaster risk management. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Okay, any other hand? Or is there somebody who does not know how to raise the hand so that he can just alert me if he wants to talk? I know there are some people, maybe it's difficult to find the button for raising the hand. Any further reaction before I allow Chris to comment on what has been? Okay, if everything is clear, Chris, can you comment on what they have just requested, whether it will be possible?
Sorry, I had a network issue. Can the question be repeated again?
the question was about one. There was said I was of concern about the color codes for coastal area, and I think the neighborhood. He was seeing like there was a confusion, so he wanted you to display the map afresh of onset's color codes. The same concern is coming from Monchiri, which is not actually comfortable with the color codes, and he was preferring that probably we categorized those regions of onsets instead of just color. But I think you can comment on it, then they can see whether they are satisfied or not.
Yeah, I think when you look at the last two rows, maybe I'll give
share the map so that.
Yeah, I think I'm still on mute. Yeah. So of course, for the coastal region and the southeastern lowlands, the cessation is likely to be in the 4th week of November. Sorry. To the so just mish up, but yeah. So sorry. So I'll do better color coding. I think with the screens, we are likely to see very different.
Yeah, I'm also seeing the editing on screen is even bringing more confusion. Can you just maybe promise to look at those?
I'll work on these colors first.
Look at zone E, the key. Zone E. You see zone E?
Yeah, there is yeah,
and
I'll do that.
Where you have just been typing.
Yeah.
You know, you have just been typing some things. The cessation is the same as the onset. So can you do work behind the scene and share a good map? Onchiri, are you satisfied or you have to say something? What can you?
Mr. Ben, thank you very much, and jump once again. I didn't in any way want to make it difficult. My concern was to have a more clearer and picturizable map which we can interpret during the breakout sessions. Therefore, with the guidance that goes to try and make it better than it is, I'm very comfortable. Then, Chairperson.
Okay. Chris, you are told that you try to make it clear so that it is usable. Try to refine it and share it. I think now we are sort of done with the outlook. Now the next step is we will be heading to breakout group sessions whereby the sectors will be preparing a reaction to the outlook and the measures which are likely to be taken. So probably, David, can you guide us? How is it planned? How is it planned? David, can you guide us? How are we going to break out? Are we going to walk into rooms?
Exactly that. I think there'll be the ICT guy will try to help us here. He'll display the groups, then you can join the group that you want. For now, we're only using 4 groups. 4 groups: agriculture, then the water and energy, then health, and then what else is there? Yeah, disaster risk management. So I think the ICT guy will do that. Then you join the group, and remember that it's a very short time. Just go for the main points, up to 5 points per area. There was a template, but now I don't know whether you have the group leaders to do that. But you can share the template. I think the template has been shared by some of the rapporteurs. So rapporteurs, you can share the, if you didn't share the template, then you can share it right on the screen. And then you go to the session that you want, to the group that you want. But remember, it's very short. So 30 minutes, and then you shall be back to the plenary. So that's how we are going to do that activity.
So I propose, David, you can lead us in that session, but then when we come back, Ezekiel can moderate the reporting back, if you don't mind. Thank you.
So I think the ICT girl she will help us go into the groups. Then you join the group that you want, and then we shall share the chair is supposed to be the sector lead, but some sectors are not on board, so we shall see what to do. And then within the sector, you appoint a chairman. You're supposed to be the sector lead, and then the rapporteur are already allocated. So the rapporteurs will be the one to take the notes, and then if you don't have the PowerPoint that we had sent earlier, then let's see the best way you can share. I think somebody can share with the rapporteurs. If it's on board, Mary, you can share with the rapporteurs the template that we had shared earlier, and then they can go on and meet. So now you go to the breakout sessions, then you join, and then continue for 30 minutes. Then we go back to the plenary.
Meanwhile, Chris, share the forecasts with all the groups.
Yeah, share the focus. Kamau, you can go to the breakout sessions. Kamau.
Hi, David.
Yes.
He's already created the breakout sessions.
Yes.
If you check the icons for those who are using their computers, we have an extra icon labeled breakout rooms.
Oh, breakout rooms, yes.
Yes. So they're already there.
Yeah, okay.
And he's already assigned to us, and the moderators for the breakout rooms. So once you go into the breakout, you click onto the breakout rooms, then you'll be able to join whichever session.
Thank you for that clarification, Chair. So there's a button there with the four windows, 4 small windows. Then you click and then you join. Thanks so much. Agriculture.
ICT, David Nanyende wants you to assist him to get to DRIM breakout room. David, have you gotten help?
Chanzo, which room does he want to join?
I wanted to join DRM, disaster. David Nanyende.
So I think we're out of the breakout sessions, but due to time, I think I'll give back the program to the rapporteur, who is supposed to be Ezekiel. And we have to be strict with the time. 5 minutes is enough because we are running out of time. So Ezekiel, if you can hear me, take over the program.
Okay, thank you.
For the sectors to present. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, David. I think now we are going to presentation. Even as we go to presentation, I would kindly request you to post your presentation on the chat box, because the deliberation will be used to update the forecast, which will be released tomorrow. And the first group which is going to present is agriculture, food security, and livestock. And I think you can go ahead. Agriculture, Simon, kindly go ahead. Simon, if you can hear me.
Sorry. Mr. Ezekiel, can you see my presentation?
Sure. I can see and I can hear you well. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Okay, let us start with the positive impacts that are likely to affect the area of agriculture and food security. Since you are expecting generally below normal rainfall throughout the country, so we are likely to see less incidences of aflatoxin that usually affects western and parts of North Rift, where we normally grow a lot of maize. These are the grain baskets of the country. And when there are a lot of rains, because this is also the period when they are supposed to be doing harvesting. So because of the less rains, we are not likely to see that problem in the current season. We are also not likely to see the much impact on in the area of because again, as I've said, maize harvesting is taking place around this period. So the harvesting will be less affected because of lack of not too much rains. We are also not likely to see a lot of flooding in most areas. Yes, we can see some flash flooding here and there. They always be there. But the impact of flooding, the incidences will not be many. So flooding will be less. That is a positive impact. Also, there are hailstones that usually affect tea growing areas, especially Kericho and surrounding areas. So because of less rains, we are not likely to see much of those incidences. Then positive impacts and negative impacts. The eastern sector, the eastern and northern sector, from that forecast, is likely to have drought. And we already, as we already aware, we already had the incidences of drought in the two areas at the moment. We're already experiencing. So which means that drought will be enhanced and also cover much more areas. So this will affect pasture, the availability of pasture, water resources for animals, and also for the crops that are usually grown in those areas. It will also affect, it will also cause conflict for pasture and water resources. It will also cause enhance migration for pasture and water. It is also likely to lead to loss of animals or loss of animal weight. It will also affect existing crops that are already there. And this will also affect in other areas, not just in the eastern sector and northern sector. It can also cause food insecurity and loss of livelihoods that for those who, because those people in those areas usually depend on especially livestock and to some extent on crops. So those will be the negative impacts in the northern and eastern sector of Kenya. For the other areas, it is mainly the food insecurity due to below normal yields that will be expected in most of those areas. We are not likely. Okay, some areas might have near normal, but some of the some areas you might get below normal yields. So that will cause food insecurity. Then mitigation measures. We have proposed that drought-resistant crops be grown in most areas, not just the eastern sector, but also in the other areas, most of the other areas, and short duration or early maturing crops. Then we shall also encourage stocking of grass and or forage and feeds, especially in the eastern sector, but also in other areas because they also have livestock. Then destocking, especially in the pastoral areas. Then water harvesting and storage. Then crop and livestock insurance will be encouraged at this time. Then food aid and cash transfers to vulnerable groups. Then water tracking for affected livestock, especially in the eastern and northern sector. And control of grazing. And then in the western sector, we encourage early planting of crops. For those who normally plant around this time, they should plant early to maximize the available moisture that will be available, the moisture that will be available. So because of time, we couldn't have much for now. That is what we have managed to prepare. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for a wonderful presentation. I don't know whether there is a reaction. If there isn't, then we go to the next presentation. This is about water and energy sector. Andrew Joe, kindly take over.
Maybe before that, Ezekiel, I can comment something on that.
Okay, you are welcome.
Am I allowed? Yeah, just to comment on the presentation from agriculture about positive impacts, like when we talk about less flooding and less hailstone. There is something we should be aware when we are expecting a poor distribution of rainfall, like what we are expecting. There is a tendency when you get heavy, even heavy hails in one day, but the damage they can cause is even more severe than if you had light hails going for a longer period. And when you can get one storm which it can really maraud it can really cause damage in terms of flash flood, where you find it has really flattened the farm. So we should really be very careful when we are handling such a situation in a poor distribution type of rainfall. Thank you.
Sure, I agree with you. I don't know whether, Simon, you have you want to react on that?
That is quite positive. I'll add it.
Thank you.
I'll add those 2 points.
Okay. What are kindly take over?
Mr. Ezekiel.
Yes, Nyangore.
Let me add on something on mitigation factors. Because we want to increase food security. Could we say that for those places which they have enough water, they can do irrigation?
Simon?
I'm saying irrigation schemes. They may have irrigations for the crops for them to increase food security.
Sure. Simon, note that.
That is, you are advising government to. There are two types of irrigation. The government can plan long-term, widespread irrigation, which I don't know whether they can do it at this time.
But what about at individual level?
There's also what we call micro irrigation.
Yes.
Which can be done at the household level.
Yeah. So could we say we encourage at the household level to do irrigation?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Hello, Simon.
Yes, sir.
I don't know whether the water people see there. Household irrigation are always regulated, especially if they're coming from public water resources, natural water resources like rivers. So it is good to highlight that it would be regulated irrigation can be encouraged. Because I know most people, what they can afford to do is use natural resource, water resources to do small-scale irrigation, but they're always regulated. If everybody goes to that kind of irrigation, then we will even lack waters in our rivers.
Yes, that is very true, but they can also, especially at the household level, they should use water harvesting. Because most of those areas, you may, at the household level, you may not expect even rivers that you have enough water. So they can also do runoff harvesting, roof and runoff harvesting.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Let me add that point.
Okay,
I think we can take besides regulated irrigation is okay. Maybe explanations can come later.
Okay.
Any other reaction? Okay. Water and energy, can you take over?
Okay. Can you allow share the screen? Simon, can you stop sharing your screen?
Hello, Simon, remove your screen. Can you stop sharing your screen so that, yeah, thank you.
And again, Simon, remember to post your presentation in the chat box.
Yes, good afternoon and welcome to the water and energy sector. So I'll go to the expected impacts. First is disruption of water supplies in ASAL counties. Another impact is shortage of water supply for human and livestock, especially schools and health facilities. Another impact is contamination of water sources. Related to that is the water-related diseases. Another impact is reduced inflows into the water reservoirs and hydropower dams. Falling water levels in reservoirs and lakes. Drying up of water ponds in ASAL counties. Water resource-based conflicts, especially human-wildlife conflicts, also the farming and pastoral community conflicts,
low water recharge in rivers that supply water for irrigation. There will be increased evaporation and evapotranspiration, increased electricity demand for cooling purposes due to high temperatures, and floods from episodic high rainfall events. Coming to mitigation, one is water tracking, particularly to the institutions, water harvesting structures, desilting water pans. We encourage Kenyans to conserve water, water treatment, especially provision of water treatment chemicals at household level, reduction in hydropower output, the hydropower mainly to take care of the peak demands as other systems take over the normal supply. Then we need continuous monitoring of water levels, and finally continuous update of forecasts. Conflict management strategies and cleaning and unclogging of drainage systems, and again use of early warning systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for that. And I welcome any reaction.
Hello.
Any reaction, please?
Hello, moderator.
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Thank you, Njogu. I wish you could have separated the positive and negative impacts, or there were no positive impacts on the water.
Drew?
It looked like they were all negatives, eh?
Okay,
Hello?
allow me to try and respond.
Yes.
You'll realize because we are going into a season of less, we are expecting less water. So most of the impacts are just negative, which we are now trying to address through the mitigation measures which we have put across.
Hello? If you look at something like infrastructure, sometimes in those areas where we normally have a lot of rainfall, with less rainfall, then we have less damage to infrastructure. Could we also say that as a positive impact?
We have not highlighted that as an impact because I think now the use of the infrastructure will not be interrupted in this case. We could talk about that if you are expecting floods, is where we could talk about damage to the bridges and all that stuff, where we could be actually also coming up. But again, when it comes to now, we are expecting much of rains, we would be talking about increased, let's say, water harvesting in the dams and all that stuff, which will be looking at how now to manage even the positive impacts, because we were moving to the season of March, but this one we are moving to the season of less. So we don't expect any damage on the infrastructure for the water and the energy facilities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then thank you, Iris.
Ezekiel, maybe the last one on what they have just commented. Allow me.
Yes, sure.
I had thought that the water and energy will have commented something on the rising water levels in the lakes. What is going to be the effect? Because you remember it was linked to a lot of rain which had been received. That is why we had lakes. So we have already people displaced. Can we say that now this is going to give a chance for people to go back from where they had been displaced? Thank you.
With this, Andrew?
Thank you, Bwana Chanzo. That would be maybe to the disaster management team who could actually look at the resettlement issues and all that stuff. But you realize that we have talked of the water level levels reducing in actually reservoirs and lakes, and that can now go to inform other sectors to get how to respond to that through settlement and all that stuff.
Thank you.
We didn't want to move out of the water and energy sector. Thank you.
Hello. Maybe a quick one.
Yes.
How about this issue of boreholes? Can it be encouraged? Digging of boreholes?
Adro?
Yeah, that's noted.
Yeah, that's noted. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, bowls, we can add more bowls in areas where now we are going to have water deficient. That's right. Thank you for that addition.
Okay, thank you too.
Time is not our side. Let's go to the next presentation. That is disaster risk management sector. Rose Kaidre, take over.
Thank you very much, moderator. Jambo, and very good afternoon to you all. Assalamu alaikum. So this is a presentation from the disaster risk management sector. Of course, I'm not Rose. My name is Anchil. I will be doing further presenting on behalf of the DRM sector. So in here, we look at the interpretation of the forecast reference to DRM sector. We also look at the anticipated impacts, both positive and negative. And lastly, we look at the mitigation measures. So in our own interpretation, we took note that the OND is likely to be a short rain season. And this is going to be descriptive in the western and central regions. We also took note that the rainfall likely experienced is gonna be below average, again in the western and central regions. In the northern Kenya coast and southern Kenya areas, we took note in the DRM sector that they're likely to experience depressed rains. Now, across the country, there is likelihood of enhanced temperatures than normal, and that effect, the ASAL counties are likely to experience drought conditions. Again, we took note that there is likelihood of isolated storms, lightning strikes, areas that may receive heavy rainfall. Now, it came out clearly that as we continue to interpret this and make good use of it, it's important to take note and try and compare and contrast the analog years of 2016, 2010, and 1996. These years had almost similar weather conditions, so it is important to learn from what was experienced at that time. Now, on anticipated events, again, we didn't clearly distinguish the positive and negative. I'll be mentioning as I go down the list. First, isolated heavy rainfall, which is likely to cause isolated flooding, flash floods, structural failures, lightning strikes, and isolated storms. Also, drought events in Assas, landslide in western and central parts of Kenya, heat stress, particularly in coast and northeastern, reduced forage and water across the country. Now, as a result of scenario number 7, there is likelihood of conflicts and insecurity in some parts of the country. Also, as a result of scenario number 6, likely to experience scenario 9, respiratory related diseases. I believe the health sector are going to talk more about this, but since DRR is a cross-cutting issue, we could not have afforded to fail highlighting these areas. And also what has just been said on hydropower reduction in hydropower due to depressed rain. Also, some parts may experience occasional strong winds, particularly the northwestern and eastern regions. Also, the sector took note that there is need to leverage upon the positive impacts, e.g. the enhanced rainfall. We need to harvest that water. Then the enhanced tourism activities, again, we need to make good use of in its entirety the positive impact. We did ponder about the mitigation and preparedness measures, and ladies and gentlemen, elected here are just a few. Bullet one rather, is capacity building. There is need, an ending need, so to speak, to create awareness and take the information on this focus out there to the communities, the vulnerable, the vulnerable people, so that they are first aware of this upcoming event, and second, and they could well marry and deploy the mitigative measures that we're proposing. Also, training the community response teams, the national response teams, and also drills and exercises to ensure that we have well-prepared teams to stage effective and timely responses. The unlikely event of adverse weather situations like flash floods, of course, to save lives. Disaster risk assessments and hazard mapping. Again, we may not overemphasize the significance of this in regard to informing evidence-based decisions, scientifically informed plans. Third, we intend to develop contingency plans as we receive the monthly forecast, the weekly forecast, the daily forecast, and the nowcasts. The event we learn or we get an early warning of an impending severe weather event, then we'll move with speed to develop contingency plans to inform evidence-based responses. We envision continue the joint planning, the multi-agency and multi-sector approach worked for us before, and we believe we have a lot of confidence that it's going to work for us even during the OND. The last bullet on that slide is that the DRM sector intends emphatically to urge line ministries, departments, and agencies, and also the county governments to take necessary actions in respect to their sectors. This, for example, there is need to step up cash transfers, step up food distribution to families who will be in acute food insecurity, also stepping up of livestock offtake. Again, this not necessarily for the ministry responsible for disaster risk management, but for stakeholders like the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Evolution, and other line MDAs and county governments. Further, we intend to urge line MDAs and county governments to make use of the anticipated heavy rainfall, increased rainfall in some areas, and use it in planting of trees, for instance, and also harvest the water. We also, in the DRM sector, intend to leverage upon early warning for effective and early response. There is also an ending need to strengthen the existing mitigation and preparedness strategies. Here, the DRM sector also took note of the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, the 4 priority areas, and of significance priority area number 3 and number 4, investing in DRR for resilience, and number 4, enhancing disaster preparedness or effective response, and building back better in recovery. Colleagues, that's all we had to share for now. We intend to review this to holistically capture all that we intend. In the interest of time, colleagues, we beg to submit. But I must say thank you very much for your audience, and we urge you to continue taking care and staying safe. Be prepared, team. Thank you very much, and back to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ochiri. Kindly, I invite any reaction. It seems there is no reaction. Then we go to the final presentation. I think in the health sector, there are only two people. There were no quorum. There was Dr. Gikungu and Sarah. I don't know whether you have anything to say, Dr. Gikungu and Sarah.
Sarah will make a presentation. Thank you.
Sarah, can you go ahead?
All right, thank you so much, moderator. Yeah, unfortunately, we were only the two of us. The health sector representative could not make it, but we're able to come up with a few points. I hope you're able to see my screen.
Yeah, we can.
All right, great. So hopefully they'll reach out to us with more inputs, but we were able to come up with a few points. So on the expected impacts for the upcoming season of forecast, it's expected that the nutritional conditions that are related to food deficits, especially in northeastern and also parts of southeastern Kenya, will prevail. And also water wash diseases, especially trachoma and scabies, will also be experienced. And then there will be increase in enteric diseases, which are related to poor hygiene, such as dysentery, diarrhea, and cholera. And also there will be heat stress and air pollution experience, especially in the ASAL regions, which will lead to respiratory diseases. And then reduced mosquito-borne diseases are expected to prevail. That is malaria, dengue fever, filarias across the country. They will be reduced. And then when you look at the, sorry, my internet is a bit shaky, at the mitigation management strategies, there's expected to be rapid vulnerability assessment that will be carried out. Food relief will be supplied and also food supplements to the vulnerable communities. Also, there will be strengthened treatment services for trachoma and also skin infections, and provision of drinking and domestic water in the ASAL regions will be provided through Bowsers. And also public and targeted risk communication will be undertaken, and also public education and promotion of hygienic household practices will be carried out in the vulnerable communities. That is all for the health sector. Hopefully they'll be able to get in touch with us and give us a more comprehensive input. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I don't know whether there is any reaction.
Hello, moderator.
Yes, go ahead.
Maybe this is just an afterthought. I don't know whether research has been done on the increased temperature and the COVID pandemic, the coronavirus, whether there will be an impact with increased temperatures and the dryness. We are likely to see less COVID decrease. Dr. Gikungu?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, these are new grounds. And if you have listened to the interviews that are going on from time to time with the experts, you will find that there are various areas where even instructions had been given, and then you hear, we have discovered that this is not necessary, so go on with this. But what I can say is that the cold tends to aggravate the condition because it affects your throat, it affects your lungs. So like those who got infected with COVID during the months of July and the first 3 weeks of August had really a rough time. And there are many ways of following this up.
like I could see in the obituaries, though only a small fraction is willing to just display the underlying conditions. We had a lot of cases during that time. So, and that is what, that is all I can say as far as temperatures are concerned. Yeah, more is coming as this thing continues to unfold. And of course, humanly speaking, we hope it will not live to long enough to fill volumes of studies, but that it would disappear as suddenly as it came to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Any
Yes,
other?
Moderator Ezekiel.
Yes.
Maybe if I may put it across, due to poor performance of the rainfall, we might see things like at a family level, emotional stress escalating and things like depression.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, I didn't note that. Any other reaction?
Ezekiel.
Yes, go ahead.
Maybe Ezekiel.
Yes.
There is something that was in the report given by Sarah. You note that there's somewhere we have mentioned cholera.
Yes.
This is good to mention when you are giving information and mentioning things that are likely to happen. But when they actually happen, we are normally very, very careful. It's you will find places that have actually recorded the cholera cases, but it goes under the category referred to as acute watery diseases, because it is, they know how they would like it reported so that it doesn't raise other issues elsewhere, even internationally. So for purposes of preparation, you say there is that possibility. The other thing is that you find that when we have extreme conditions of lack of water or drought, we have issues of hygiene and so on. And so cholera will not be absent, especially in the low-income communities where even the living conditions, the living standards are very, very low. And it's the same thing that will happen when we have floods, because again, the same things will arise. So you will find both ways. When we are forecasting floods or when we are forecasting drought, cholera will be mentioned. I thought I should mention that because it appeared in the notes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Any other reaction?
Ezekiel.
Go ahead, Shaban.
There's this issue of ultraviolet. I don't know whether maybe I'm off. Does that have any bearing, Dr. Kikungu, with this kind of phenomena when we are expecting maybe higher temperatures or increased drought?
I would need to check on that. And if I find some information, I can share tomorrow. Right now, I don't have any input on that.
Okay,
if that is acceptable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think for the interest of time, we'll go to the next session. And let me thank all the sectors which participated in this. And we are going to include all your deliberations there in our write-up for the forecast, which will be released tomorrow. And let me now hand over to the Office of the Director for official closing. Masika, kindly take over.
Good afternoon, everybody. Masika has stepped out. This is Bahati Mosilu. I guess since it's the official closing, I'd like to welcome the Director of the Department, the Acting Director, Dr. David Kikungu, to take us into the next session. Thank you, everybody, for your wonderful contributions and your wonderful sharing. We really hope that this forecast will come out in time tomorrow for all of us. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Daktari, it's up, you're on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Bahati, and thank you, Ezekiel, and all the moderators. I hope my mic is on, yeah. And all the moderators for the good work. Thank you for the presentations, the breakout groups, the various sectors. It's very clear that a lot of thought and work has been put into this. And I also want to thank you, our audience, for listening keenly and raising issues where you found things not clear. I want to really appreciate you. And we are actually looking forward to tomorrow when we issue the forecast for the country and catering for the various zones, catering for the various sectors, and also the way forward. And indeed, sharing on what possible measures that users ought to take, given that we are going into very uncomfortable conditions in most of the places where we have highlighted. So thank you very much for your patience and your input in all of this. I want to wish the group that will go on to refine this in readiness for tomorrow. I want to wish them all the best and to encourage them to consult where they need assistance, because tomorrow we go out full blast to issue the national forecast. So thank you very much and wish you, it's heading to lunch. Janzu, I don't know whether you have lunch or is it virtual also? So thank you very much.
One should give us lunch.
Yeah, he should, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Daktari, sorry.
Yes?
Excuse me, Daktari, sorry, sir.
Yes, Batu. Yeah.
Could we just, I'm not sure whether Adegu, I don't know whether we managed to get a group photo. Could we just put a
good
video
idea.
for a second and allow our IT guys to help us?
Oh, Bahati?
Yes.
I've just confirmed with Mr. Kamau, he's already taken, although I guess most people didn't have their cameras on, so I don't know whether you prefer.
Yeah. Could we just do it again, Mary? Is that okay?
Okay, yeah, good idea, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, let us have our videos on just for a second. Just for 1 second. Kindly, videos on.
Sure.
Kamau, you're on the floor, please.
You have very grim faces. Maybe they should see some smiles or something.
Smile, everybody. 1, 2, 3, smile. Are we done, Kamau?
How do you smile inside the mask? Bahati,
we can see your eyes.
How do you smile behind the mask? Even you, Bahati.
Kamau, umemaliza? Somebody has interfered.
Well, Muzilu.
Kamau, are you finished? All right, everybody. Thank you very much for your time. We will see you tomorrow. The floor will be open at 8:30. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, and have a good afternoon.